Hey everybody, Wes here. Today I wanted to talk about a game from my childhood that I thoroughly enjoyed, even though it was really difficult. So difficult that you could even say it wasn't very much fun at all. And that game is going to be The Immortal. Now, there were two versions released back in the early 90s, one for the NES, one for the Sega Genesis. Genesis is the one that I played throughout middle school, and I didn't play the NES version until I was maybe 18 or so. Both games are pretty damn difficult. And what I wanted to do today is I wanted to go ahead and take a look at the two games, compare them, and see what the differences are and see which is the better of the two. Now, there's so many differences within this game, there's just no way that I could have covered it all. And I covered a lot because this review, this comparison is very in-depth. So I actually had to make it multiple parts. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into it and let's take a look at The Immortal. In November of 1990, The Immortal was first released on the Apple II GS and was then quickly ported to other PCs such as the Amiga, Atari ST, and MS-DOS. While all of these versions were essentially the same other than the audio, the DOS version offered an additional gameplay mechanic, the battle screen. The earlier versions of The Immortal all shared the same generic fighting mechanism, basically two animated pawns duking it out on the very same small isometric background you explore, which reminds me a lot of Chewbacca's intergalactic chessboard. The battle screens were then included in both the Nintendo and Sega Genesis versions, which are the ones we're going to take a deeper look at today. The NES cover art depicts a geriatric wizard who happens to be the unnamed protagonist in this adventure, while the Genesis cover has a chilling depiction of the grisly Grim Reaper. Which one looks more interesting to you? Reaper or Geezer? Reaper or Geezer? The NES title screen is bland, while the Genesis one has a sweet graphic of the cover art, which back in '91 was pretty damn impressive. The Reaper's presence will, without a doubt, be known in this one. So before we dive in, let's first explore what summons an elderly wizard to a dark and dangerous labyrinth to begin with. Now, since our H hero was never referenced by name in this adventure, we'll simply refer to him as the Old Man. And as hard as it is to fathom, the Old Man is actually a student of the great wizard Mortimer, who has gone missing upon entering the ruins of the ancient city Iranok, destroyed 1,000 years ago by fire-breathing dragons. Through a dream, Mortimer requests assistance from the Old Man, who was then summoned to the entrance of a gigantic labyrinth located deep in the depths under the ruins of the long-dead city. The labyrinth is inhabited by warring goblins and trolls, and festooned with an overabundance of life-ending traps. We begin in a small room adorned with a single candle on a table in the Genesis version, while the table is inconspicuously removed from the NES version, leaving the burning candle to rest upon the floor. Both release a plume of smoke which materializes into the face of Mortimer, who then instructs Dunrick to rescue the captured wizard, who has been imprisoned down in the dark depths below. Well, the Old Man isn't Dunrick, so who exactly is he? The next course of action is to obviously move on to the next room. Dude! I hadn't even taken a mere 4 steps before being devoured by a man-eating worm. Better get used to this. Like I mentioned before, the Reaper's presence will be felt. Now, upon entering the next room, the first thing you'll see is the body of a slain fighter lying on the ground. After ransacking the corpse, you discover a ring with the name Dunrick etched in the band. Really? This is the guy that Mortimer employed to rescue him? He couldn't even make it out of the second room. Well, I guess I should cut him a break considering I was devoured by a worm within the first few paces of the labyrinth. Now, this is what I thought as a kid when I played it nearly 25 years ago, but it turns out that the cadaver actually belongs to Dunrick's flunky Eric, whose occupation happens to be a fighter. Hey, you get what you pay for. In the Genesis version, Eric's spoils include a scroll for a fireball spell, which enables you to shoot 3 fireballs at your foes, while in the NES version, you have unlimited fireballs from the onset. Another difference you'll notice is that the floor on the NES version is littered with traps, flames spewing from the ground, 4th of July-like displays of fireballs rocketing through the air, and pesky bats. All of these annoyances are mercifully omitted from the Genesis version, which, if you haven't noticed by now, resembles the PC versions of the game far more than the NES one does. After retrieving the Fireball Scroll in the Genesis version, before you even have the chance to mutter Goblin Cock, you're ambushed by a green baddie and the screen immediately switches to battle mode. This is where and how you must defeat your enemies in hand-to-hand combat. The graphics in these scenes are pretty impressive for a 16-bit machine, but here's the biggest difference between the Genesis version and all other versions of the game. Holy shit! Did you see that? Sold! Seriously, this is what sold me on the game as a kid. Graphic violence in console games was almost unheard of at the time, let alone blood, but in the Immortal, we're met with horrendous death scenes that quenches even the most insatiable thirst for bloodlust. While the 8-bit version also has excellent graphics in battle mode, the absence of brutal death scenes is without a doubt missed. But seriously, do you really think Nintendo, the Disney of video games, was going to allow even a drop of blood to be spilled here? Don't you worry, he's just resting his eyes. Around the corner you spot a goblin throwing down with another human. The angry goblin hisses at you to mind your own business and promptly attacks the senior citizen with a mace. You may notice that the NES version plays music during battle, while in the Genesis port, you duel minus your foe's inevitable swan song. Since this is the version I played as a youngster, the absence of music doesn't really bother me, but nowadays, I feel the game would have benefited with a battle theme. Once you burn this latest goblin to a crisp, or put him down for a nap in the NES version, you then confront Mortimer's flunky and manservant Ulandor, who seems relieved that you have arrived in order to fulfill the task of rescuing his master. He leaves you a key to open the chest located in different areas within the same room, which yields several important items in both versions, as well as a map with the location of hidden pit traps for Genesis gamers. The next room on the Nintendo has 2 goblins waiting for you, while the Genesis just has 1, who warns you to stay away. All warnings unheeded, you split the goblin like a banana and retrieve a door key from the 2-piece cadaver. The 8-bit version requires you to loot another chest, which contains 50 gold pieces, a charm spell, and a bottle which was recovered from the chest in the previous room of the Genesis game. Just minor differences, really. One thing that remains unchanged, though, is the tune that plays out while you retrieve items. Both versions offer the same music, which is catchy, but I personally love how EA utilizes chiptunes on their NES titles. Anyone who has played Skate or Die 2 knows exactly what I mean. The next trap-infested room is pretty simple to navigate with a little help from the instruction manual, which leads you to an empty room. Whew, what a relief, especially after fighting monsters and dodging... Wait a minute. What the hell? So the next room is dim and houses a couple of invisible monsters. Accessing your fireball spell and lighting the torches that line the walls allows you to see the terrain more clearly and spot the shadows of your invisible foes. No submenus needed for the NES one, just blast those infinite fireballs at will. The charm found inside of the previous NES chest is located here in the Genesis room. Both versions leave behind an invaluable amulet, which is used in the very next room. You come across a ray of sunlight that shines through a tiny crack in the wall. Now apparently, this ray of light envelops a trigger on the floor every 1,000 years, which unveils a ladder to descend further down into the lower depths of the labyrinth. Obviously, time is not on the old man's side, and he simply cannot wait for the next millennium. Holding the recently discovered amulet up to the light should solve this puzzle, redirecting the sunlight onto the trigger. Just make sure not to read the runes on the back side of said amulet, or... The NES version refers to the runes as an incantation. Either way, reading it results in the same fate, although much more interesting on the Nintendo. The bottom line is, don't read the runes. This reveals the ladder to the next level, so let's head that way and... Are you freaking kidding me? One extra floor on the NES version with a bed of straw to rest on, and finally, with the first level completed, we are then rewarded with a password. Huzzah!
how's that for a first level? I mean, there were all kinds of cheap one-hit deaths in there, like those worms. And then there's also the cheap deaths where you fall down holes. The freaking ladder hole. If you don't grab the ladder just right, you fall to your death. I mean, give me a break. It's set up in an isometric grid, and the controls are not isometric whatsoever. So, I mean, come on. But that's the nature of the game. So that should give you a taste of what's to come. So let's not waste any more time. Let's check out level 2.
Level 2 immediately sets you in a room with a moving acidic puddle. Come into contact with it, and it will consume and dissolve your flesh, leaving only a pile of bones. Looks like someone else found out the hard way. Now, according to ancient legend, R&R the Elven Lord had previously explored the labyrinth in search of the magical water that was rumored to heal the most dire of inflictions, which R&R would most certainly succumb to. Unfortunately, he instead fell victim to acid blob poisoning, leaving only a skeleton lying in a heap with nothing but his trusty sword, Solendul. Searching his bones, both versions then equip you with Solendul, promising to endow you with elven agility and quickness in combat. Horseshit. I honestly didn't notice a goddamn difference, seeing as I accidentally forgot to pick up this sword on my first go-around. If you value your flesh, you'll pass on searching the bones any further. Through the next door, you stumble upon a merchant jamming on his loot. Strange place for a merchant, wouldn't you say? He sells invaluable anti-slime oil to prevent skin failure.
You're going to give yourself skin failure!
Which of course he overcharges for. Haggling will get him to lower the price. We're also introduced to the Will-o'-the-Wisps, which can be tamed by chanting the charm found on the previous floor. Make sure to use this, or the wisps will follow you around and attack consistently like angry hornets. The old man then finds himself face to face with a pair of goblin guards, determined to stop you from advancing any further. Now is a perfect chance to dissect some of the differences between the battle system of this game. First, the controls. The controls in the Labyrinth and battle screen are both more fluid in the Genesis version, but by no means are they perfect. In fact, they're not even close. In order to attack in the NES version, you can simply press B to stab, which is the least efficient attack, or you can hold either left or right while pressing B to deliver a forward or backhanded slash. Holding the A button while pressing left or right will cause the old man to dodge the enemy's attack. The same controls for evading attacks are used in the Genesis version, only with the C button. Delivering pain is much more efficient in this version, simply pressing the directional pad to the left and right to deliver forward and backhanded blows respectively. Now let's go ahead and examine these two meters that both the old man and enemy have on their respective flanks. The outer meter represents life, while the inside one represents fatigue. There's a method to battling in this game, in which the best offense is a good defense. The more you or the enemy swing, the larger the fatigue meter grows, which in turn slows down attacks. Once the enemy is winded, you can then unleash the barrage of attacks that will mow down your foe in no time. Naturally, the same can be said for the old man, who if winded, will need to dodge attacks until the fatigue meter goes back down to an attackable level. This is how to battle in both versions, except there's one big difference between the two. The Genesis battles are easy and predictable, with the enemy swinging left, then right, left, then right, rinse and repeat. They'll continue to swing at you even as their fatigue meter hits its peak, rendering them virtually defenseless and leaving that belly to be open to spill steaming entrails all over the floor. The NES version, on the other hand, is completely unpredictable, with the enemy taking random swings from random directions, oftentimes pausing to regenerate stamina. This creates a much more challenging battle to win, requiring quick wits and reflexes to persevere. I guess EA really wanted to show off those death scenes in the Genesis version, huh? Once inside of the room that the goblins were guarding, you come face to face with the king of the Drool tribe, Gresh the Wise. His cronies and traps keep you from speaking to him, but not to fear, we can easily loosen his tongue by dropping the spores found in the previous level onto a patch of dirt, which almost instantly springs a noxious fungus that kills nearly as quickly as it takes for the toxic boomers to grow from the ground. This means get the hell out of the room. Quick. Once you return, the near-dead king suddenly wants to cooperate. He just had to do things the hard way, didn't he? He asks for water and mentions a fountain, which had seemingly felt as a fable of yore. Between dying breaths, he mutters clues as how to advance to the next floor down, such as dissolving a rock in acidic slime to reveal one of the 3 gems needed to solve the end floor puzzle. You then come across a rude little shit of a dwarf who happens to be the creator of the numerous puzzles scattered within the labyrinth. He doesn't bother hiding his disdain for wizards, egging the old man on with the 3rd gem that is needed to escape the 2nd floor. Tossing some compliance powder in the dwarf's face will change his tune quickly, and before you can weasel any more out of him, he vanishes in a secret wall passage. Moving along, the presence of fucking annoying bats in the NES version plagued the game, which I guess is the trade-off for having unlimited fireballs. It's a real pain in the ass escaping victorious from a close battle with just a thread of life left, only to be killed by a flying bag of diseased vermin. I really don't see the purpose of adding them in the 8-bit version, other than to goad players into throwing their controllers and breaking them, so they can buy new ones while lining Mario's already full pockets. Where's Ozzy when you need him? Finally, the end of this difficult floor looms near, and following the clues from the half-dead Goblin King, the old man descends the ladder to level 3.
Whew! Man, was that a tough level. I mean, whose great idea was it to put bats in the NES version? God, I really hate those fucking bats. So obviously you can see that there's a lot of frustration in this game, but we just hit the tip of the iceberg. Let's go ahead and move on to the 3rd floor.
The next floor places the old man near a giant chasm, and taking the hole on the left down reveals the same 2 floors on both versions, only swapped. In the NES version, you stumble upon a goblin and a troll really going at it. You intervene and quickly dispatch of the murderous troll, who yields a ring which, when worn, disguises its wearer as a goblin. In the Genesis version, there's 2 goblins fighting instead of a goblin and a troll, and when one of the goblins loses the fight, the other swiftly closes in to teach Gramps a lesson. After learning the hard way not to fuck with Senior Slaughter, you loot the same ring from the dead goblin to reveal it was a troll all along in disguise. The Nintendo version could have pulled this off as well, and why they didn't is a mystery, but whatever, no big deal. Using the ring, you can easily sidle along a lone goblin guarding a chest, but your disguise sure as hell doesn't fool those goddamn bats, who seemingly attack any and everything that has blood coursing through its veins.
2 bats. 3 fabulous
Fuckers!
Descending
the other ladder near the chasm brings you to yet another battle between troll and goblin. Step in once again and cut the 8-bit bastard troll to ribbons, while in the Genesis version you obtain another fireball spell which allows you to burn the motherfucker to cinders. In turn, you save the goblin who opens a door for you which leads to King Gresh, who asks if you remember him. I'm not senile, dagnabbit! Since you gave him water earlier, he will allow you to pass. Geez, who's really the senile one here? Seems Gresh has forgotten that he wouldn't have needed water in the first place if he hadn't tried to kill him with poisonous spores. And the spores should have claimed his life, yet here he is, alive and well. Maybe there's something to this magic water after all. He warns you that beyond the spikes is Shindrak territory. Troll Land. The spike room in both versions are identical, with the same path and pattern to reach the gem, then ladder. But beware, there's nothing like being sodomized by a pike springing from the floor a la Vlad the Impaler, and I'm pretty sure the merchant doesn't carry Preparation H.
Ow!
Now Gresh wasn't kidding about this area being troll territory, and the Welcome Committee isn't too pleased with your presence. How to deal with an angry host? How about decapitation? Yeah! I gotta say, there's nothing more satisfying than slicing off an ugly fucker's head. Well, except for maybe cutting his face off. Take that, Sonny! You come across another one of Lindy the Dwarfs Puzzles, requiring you to drop a gem into a green light on the NES version, and a purple one for the Genesis. Screw this puzzle up, and you'll be experiencing hellfire. Succeed, and you'll find yourself on the other side of the chasm, disembarking to level 4 below.
You're probably getting a feel for how this game is. and that's only the 3rd level. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and cut this video off right here. Thanks a lot for watching though. Stay tuned for part 2. It's coming up soon where we'll cover the rest of the level.